Welcome to the OnPoint podcast series. I'm your host, Linda Traylor, and I am super excited to introduce a new addition to our lineup. It's called the Mentor Sessions podcast, and this series is designed with one purpose, and that is to spotlight the kind of medical affairs leaders who just don't do the job, but elevate the profession. And I could not have chosen a better inaugural guest for my podcast. Her name is Dr. Davida White. She and I met over a decade ago and had an instant connection. And it's been that way ever since. We see each other only once or twice a year, but it just picks up where it left off, and I love it. But what I think her leadership style represents is what I consider to be exceptional leadership qualities, and that's relentless curiosity, a continuous evolution, a commitment to lifting others up, a lack of ego around titles, and desire to advance the profession. So her leadership style, in my opinion, is the poster child for what this podcast is going to celebrate. And so I'm super excited she's my inaugural first guest. My hope for these conversations is that it sparks something in you, a little curiosity, a little self-reflection, maybe even the courage to sketch your own next chapter. But medical affairs is evolving so fast, and the leaders who thrive are the ones who never stop learning. So let's dive in. This is the Mentor Sessions podcast, and I'm so excited you're here. Welcome to OnPoint, the Mentor Sessions podcast, where the most exceptional leaders in medical affairs share their real stories behind their growth, mistakes, breakthroughs, and leadership journeys. The views and opinions expressed by our guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of their employers or affiliated organizations. So welcome, Davida, to the Mentor Sessions podcast. I am so excited for you to be the inaugural guest of this podcast. And I really, there are two reasons I chose you as the first guest. One is you and I have known each other over a decade, and we had that instant chemistry and we've just stayed in contact, and no matter how much time in between our seeing each other, it picks up where it left off, and it's been a really incredible friendship. But the primary reason is that I have absolute respect for your leadership skills, your leadership ability, and I feel like you're one of those leaders people need to hear from. And so I am so excited for you to be part of this podcast and be the first guest. So why don't you, for the audience, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes. First, I want to say thank you so much. And you are right. From the moment that we met, it was definitely a instant connection. And I have looked forward to seeing you at whether it's at a conference or for MSLs or for Medical Professional Society. But I just want to say I really appreciate this opportunity. And thank you for inviting me to serve as your inaugural leader.
Fantastic. Welcome.
My name is Davida White. I am a physician by education with a specialty in obstetrics and gynecology. Prior to joining pharma many years ago, I was the head of the Office of Community Health and Outreach Services for the state of New Jersey. I joined pharma 18 years ago, and the majority of that time I have spent serving as a U.S. and global medical affairs leader. And just recently, I served as head of the field medical group for cardiovascular and metabolism at Johnson. And this month, I will be starting a new exciting position as a global field medical head for a new biotech company. Pretty excited about that.
Congratulations on that new chapter. I think that is such an exciting opportunity. And I know they're very fortunate to have you, but I know it's going to be a challenge and an excitement and a new chapter for you as well. So I certainly wish you well on that new journey.
Thank you. And I just want to add my biggest accomplishment, though, is serving as the mom to two amazing young adults and one boxer pit bull mix named Brewster.
That is an accomplishment. Awesome. Awesome. All right. As we've talked about, this podcast is going to be modeled after the Tribe of Mentors book in style, in that we're going to ask a series of questions to everybody who comes on the podcast. It may be in the same order, it may not be all the questions, but really the goal and purpose of this is for the audience to be able to learn from people who are standout leaders and what makes them tick, where they failed and pick themselves up, and where they just the story behind the story. And so that's the intent of these questions, but we're going to keep it informal and conversational as we go. And if we veer off from any question, that's absolutely okay. So I want to jump into the first question, Davida. And I think it's starting off where, like, what's the one decision or mindset shift that positively impacted your career in medical affairs?
My biggest mindset shift was first understanding how I could impact and help patients. So growing up, I always had the goal, at least as long as I can remember, of becoming a physician. And my vision of that was helping people one patient at a time, whether it was in an office setting, a surgery setting, or of course, delivering babies, which is the best. But it was really through my work leading a team at the Department of Health and Human Services for New Jersey and working in medical affairs across several different pharma companies and different therapeutic areas that I realized, Linda, that I had the ability to impact countless lives through improving their healthcare services and ensuring that their physicians, providers were educated and had access to safe and effective therapeutic options.
So your desire for helping patients, it started with a traditional view of the world, and you discovered that you could scale it, essentially, is that sort of that mindset shift that kind of led you to the field of medical affairs. I love that. I love that background. Was that an instant sort of understanding, or did it evolve, or is that what precipitated you moving to medical affairs?
Yeah, I think it definitely evolved. I had a greater appreciation for it working for the state of New Jersey, of course. And it was that position that led me into pharma. I think initially coming into medical affairs, I didn't quite understand how my job would be impactful to so many. But after a while, it became very evident that my education of my physicians and healthcare providers was making a big difference.
Absolutely. I do think it takes a village when it comes to that, engaging and helping healthcare providers learn, and having those multiple perspectives, especially those that are directly connected to understanding the clinical environment, is meaningful for a team, a medical affairs team. So let's transition into what good looks like. How do you define success in medical affairs, and how has that evolved over the years?
A tough and complex question, since for us, we have a lot of conversations on how we define success. I think the definition of success has definitely been evolving. Operations organizations still today operate with yesterday's metrics, are really missing the true value and function of medical affairs. So, for example, years ago, we talked about only the number of MSL interactions, the congresses we covered, the publication counts, all of that. But what we know is that these are activity metrics and they're not outcome metrics. And they will definitely tell us, they give us insight on whether or not our team is busy, but really not whether they are driving impact. So I think now, and we'll call it modern day medical affairs, we really have to focus on our strategic value. So again, the influence of evidence strategy. How does medical affairs input, how does our input shape clinical trials, endpoints, and post-market studies? Success in that space is where medical insights directly inform pipeline decisions. What is the quality of our external scientific partnerships? Are leaders seeking us out for collaboration, right? Versus us just reaching out to them. And I think success in that space looks like being viewed as a necessary and valued scientific partner. Cross-functional impact. How frequently do commercial, market access, other teams within the organization, regulatory teams proactively reach out to us to seek our insights? I think success in that space is when we're recognized as essential to business decisions and not just optional. And we're seen as strategic partners and just not as tactical partners. Speed and quality of our insight generation. How quickly can we synthesize field intelligence into actionable insights? Success, but being ahead of issues and not being reactive to them. And I think for all of us who've spent time in medical affairs, we've been on the reactive portion of things, and it's not a great place to be. And of course, patient outcomes. Are we improving the appropriate use of our medications? Are we educating providers on best practices and therapeutic updates? And I think, again, success for that is measurable impact on patient outcomes and not just on the number of times that we reach out and have engagement with our physicians. And then I think finally, it's got to be talent development. And are we truly building the future of medical leaders? And success, of course, is having a pipeline of individuals who are ready to elevate as we step back.
I love that. So what I heard you just say, and I love that, is success is outcome driven, and outcomes are defined by the stakeholders you're partnering or engaging with, and that there is not one answer. There is, like, your outcomes are defined by the scenario and who the stakeholders are. Yeah, I love that. I think that's really great. I know it's always hard on these podcasts to share specific examples, but what would be the most, like, a pivotal moment or a proud moment that you would say that you, like, demonstrated success in context of your role in medical affairs?
Yeah. I'll use one at Johnson. During my tenure there, we built out a cardiovascular metabolism field medical excellence organization. And it was through that group that we were really able to improve a lot of our infrastructure and capability. And one example was how we did our insights. And we went from a situation where insights were being brought into the organization to now we were seen as really leaders of bringing insights into the organization. And those insights were informing strategy. So that was a huge win for us.
So that essentially the organization that you built out got very purposeful in the way they gathered insights and delivered insights internally, to the point where you were the go-to source for understanding what's going on in the medical community.
Absolutely. And we were able to translate some of those field insights into strategic recommendations.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Let's move a little bit into leadership topic. In your opinion, what separates, we've been in industry for a long time, and we have met a lot of medical affairs leaders, and we know what good looks like. And we also know those exceptional people, right? So what separates exceptional medical affairs leaders from good medical affairs leaders?
Yeah. I think number one, exceptional medical affairs leaders are truly patient centric. They appreciate that we have an incredible opportunity to improve patient outcomes. And they appreciate that in order to be patient centric, we also have to be customer centric and we must be seen as valuable partners to our healthcare providers. I think exceptional leaders today really embrace the fact that medical affairs is a strategic function of our pharma business unit. We're not just tactical, that we also need to learn to be visionaries, strategically focused, and help our teams understand the why behind the strategy, but yet give them space on how they address the how. And then finally, I think an exceptional leader is one that anticipates change. The leader is agile, the team is agile, and they're able to build and also improve on the entire medical affairs capability. So whether that's training, upskilling, external engagement planning, insights, what we just talked about, medical excellence, just really creating infrastructure that supports a high performing team.
I love so many aspects of that. I think one of the things that stand out to me and that I know about you is that the overarching umbrella, that sort of North Star, is your view towards patient centricity and how that guides all decisions. And I think that also trickles down into a prioritization and what you focus on in the moment based on what is needed to facilitate improved outcomes and improved outcomes of patient journey, the healthcare provider journey. All of that is still under the umbrella of that patient centricity viewpoint. The other two things that you said that I really love is that you believe exceptional leaders communicate the why.
Huh?
I think that is one of the standouts of exceptional leaders because I see a lot of people operate on the need to know type of mindset. And I get it, but people will really understand and work hard and become problem solvers if they understand why they're doing something. So that communication of the why is really critical.
Yes.
And then the thing that I know about you and that I love most is that, and I love your phrase, you give them the space to operate, is that not everybody has to do it the same way if they know the end they're driving to, the outcome they're driving to. And giving them the freedom to operate allows them to use their unique strengths and their talents to and problem solving skills to drive change or drive whatever it is you need to drive because they know why they're doing it and they have the freedom to operate. I loved all of that.
And you know what, Linda, I think that's where best practices are born, right? People are able to express their creativity, find the best way to execute a specific tactic, and then we can see, hey, this works, this doesn't work, and how can we up level the whole entire team? And one of the things that I miss saying, which is probably the most important, is I think exceptional leaders are invested in the growth of the individuals on their team. I will tell anybody I am here present today because I've had exceptional leaders really pour into me. They coach, they mentor, they build the next level of leaders. And their legacy is not just about how many product launches they've done, which I've been happy to say how many, but also how many leaders they've developed.
There is this it factor that a lot of exceptional leaders probably have. And nobody really understands the formula behind exceptional leaders because it's one of those formulas that is, you know it when you see it, not
Yeah.
exactly sure how it applies to everybody. But if you're like I consider you an exceptional leader. If you're looking back on your younger self early in your career, like knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self on this sort of path to being an exceptional leader?
two things. I think first, enjoy and trust the journey. So often, me included, I think we're hyper focused on the outcome and we miss the joy of the process and we miss the joy of the people who are along the journey with us. And along the way, I think things happen, there are little setbacks, but we later find out that actually some of those setbacks were setups for the next adventure. So that's definitely something I tell my 30-year-old self to chill out. And then some more pragmatic advice would be to network more. I think we talked in the past, and I've mentioned to you that I'm definitely an introvert disguised as an extrovert. And in relationships, conversations that don't feel authentic to me, they become very hard and taxing for me. But what I know now is that in order to be effective in the medical affairs space, in order to be an effective leader, in order to grow as a medical affairs professional, or really any profession, a huge part of that is being able to network and build a network. So gone are the days where we can work in silos. I think in order for us to really improve care for patients, we have to work well with our commercial colleagues, our marketing colleagues, folks in and outside of our organization. So it's really imperative that we're able to network them and find co-creators so that we can bring our vision to life. And again, in this truly volatile market, in both big and small pharma, we definitely had conversations about this, Linda. Networking may be the key to your next gig. People need to know your talents. They need to know your name, what you're passionate about, and what your professional aspirations are.
Absolutely. I think establishing, like knowing your point of view and being able to communicate it out loud in a succinct way in conversation, they're practicing that is as important as the networking and engaging and putting yourself out there. Is put yourself out there, but be ready to say something that's going to make
Right.
an impact. So yeah, that's something that I would also tell my younger self is don't discount the value of networking and the work that goes into doing it well. So yeah, I absolutely think that's a good one.
Yeah.
And I also love your comment about telling your younger self to chill out and that some of your missteps are actually setups. I love that. So let's go on to this next question around giving us an example of a failure that maybe set you up for later success or along those lines.
Yeah. I think anytime you look over your career and you self-reflect, there are definitely areas, whether it's collective or individual, where you can appreciate better ways of working. And I think as a collective, a medical affairs collective, coming into medical affairs many years ago, there was definitely an appreciation that medical, commercial, marketing, all of us had very specific roles. There is a tight firewall between us. There should probably be minimal collaboration between the two to ensure that everyone's safe and compliant. But what we have appreciated now, definitely as a greater team, is that if we really want to be successful in improving patient outcomes, we have to work together. When we are siloed and we're not strategically aligned, our customers and our patients pay the brunt of that price. Medical affairs is not a support organization. We are leaders in strategy. We have a seat at the table. And in order for us to be the most effective, we've got to hold hands with our colleagues compliantly and work with all individuals across the organization. And then if I think of a failure as an individual, I remember years ago, near the beginning of my career, working for a relatively small company as a regional leader. And during that time, there was the national lead position became available. I was super excited, and I saw this as the obvious next step to my professional growth. After being unsuccessful, I had to take a step back and evaluate, like, how could I improve my candidacy if this opportunity ever presented itself again? So that was the time that I really leaned into the importance of expanding my skill set. And I did this by raising my hand and saying yes. And when I have talent and
Oh,
development
yeah.
conversations to this day, I express the importance of raising your hand and saying yes. So it was in that moment that I leaned into training and development of MSLs and field medical capabilities. And little did I know that raising my hand at that time would lead to different coaching and opportunities, medical initiative, leadership, and it really would set me up for a global career in medical excellence. Now, looking back, that one no set me up for some amazing experiences, traveling around the world, meeting colleagues from all different cultures, and working to ensure that they had the best medical infrastructure and tools to be successful. So, one of the best no's I've ever gotten.
So I love that story. The other part of that story that I think is important to highlight is your reaction to the no. Is like
Mm.
immediately, how do I how what does this mean in terms of that introspection? That's one of the marks of an exceptional leader is the immediate, not bitter, not frustrated. You immediately, okay, what do I need to do?
Mhm.
How do I upskill? What's the next step? And you did it. Like you just started that forward momentum. So that is a fantastic story. I love that story. And the other part of it was how you immediately thought, share it, like, right? To
Yeah.
tell you share it with the others. And as you develop people, tell me, let's dig in. I don't, let's dig into this project that you launched, I think, at a couple of places where you give people the space
Mm.
to contribute to their ideas and create a space for innovation. Tell people that story.
Yeah. So I call it Seek the Wisdom. And coming into J&J, we had a team, all hands on deck of about 80 individuals. And as it's really difficult for folks to get to know you and you know them. So I started having these meetings, very small, called Seek the Wisdom. We would have them once a quarter, and it was myself, potentially another leader from medical affairs or someone else in the organization, and a small group of MSLs or other individuals that were a part of our team. And it was really great because it was a time where there was absolutely no agenda, there were no objectives. It was an open floor. And folks could talk about anything that they were interested in or things that they wanted to share. So it turned out to be a great way to identify gaps and ways that we could better support the team. Folks also used it as a time to share their highlights and their wins. But what it turned into was this fantastic space and time for creativity and innovation. I didn't go into that with that insight, but definitely that's what it turned into. We provided psychological safety because in those small groups, there was no right answer, there was no wrong answer. Failure didn't have a definition in that space. So a lot of the things that we ended up doing to improve our capability came out of these small group conversations. So this is probably something I will do forever, regardless of whether the team is small or big. I think you just need to provide space for folks to share their thoughts. And as I mentioned to you also before, Linda, a lot of times this is where the collective genius really comes out and you're able to find answers to a lot of your questions.
Oh, yeah. I love that story. I love how it evolved and how it ended up being because we don't ever, we often fail at making time for creative
Mhm.
thinking, creative
Uh-huh.
conversations. And so I love that we're that project with the intent of giving space to get to know each other, where you don't have an agenda or rules or the psychological safety. I love that word. I love that no titles didn't matter. It was just really a creative forum. That to me is, I think that should almost be a best practice because I feel like we're evolving so fast, and having people around the table problem solving and brainstorming within your team is is a phenomenal way to think outside the box. And
Mhm.
especially if you say there's no wrong answer here. Even if, just throw it out. We need to be having that conversation. So I really love that practice. I don't know if anything like this came from that meeting, but what is a belief or behavior that you've changed, that's changed your mind, or that you've changed your mind about in the last 5 years?
It's okay not to know the plan. My friends and family would tell you that I'm the person on the vacation, Linda, who needs to know what we're doing, what time are we waking up, what time are we heading out, where are we going, when are we coming back. I need a minute by minute playbook. And that's because I want to be prepared. I need to have the right outfit on, the right shoes, will I be comfortable? And also, you want to make the most of the day, right? And we don't want to spend any time just lollygagging around. But lately, I've really been open to life's surprises and being okay knowing that there's a power greater than me, than us, that holds an ultimate plan. My dear friend and colleague Nina often reminds me that God does not need a assistant. So just to relax. And I like Seek the Wisdom because, again, it's not planned. There is no agenda. It's just a time for us to have free flowing dialogue. And it's amazing how, when you let go of the reins sometimes, that's when the magic happens.
Woo, that's good. I love that. Mm. So is there anything that kind of pushed you to let go of the reins that made you rethink that? Or is that just something that evolved over time?
Yeah, I think it definitely has evolved. I can't think of one particular incident that has happened. I just know the older I get and the more I realize that I actually have control over nothing, it's easier to let the reins.
True that. Yes, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about skills and mindsets, technology. Like, looking at it from that perspective, what do medical affairs professionals need to thrive in the next decade as
Yeah,
this profession moves forward?
yeah. I think for me, the answer is definitely AI. I know in the last year, I've gone from almost, in the last 2 years, really minimal use of AI to really starting to incorporate it not only in my professional life, but also in my personal life. Medical affairs professionals must learn to leverage AI and advanced analytics, not just as a tool, but as a force multipliers
Yeah.
that can fundamentally transform how we generate, synthesize, and deliver medical insights. And why does this matter? The volume of the literature, real world data, scientific information, it's really just overwhelming now. And in a more traditional model, medical affairs professionals, and we've done that. We've spent countless time reviewing journals and attending congresses and synthesizing all these insights and really having a difficult time to keep up with the pace. And in the meantime, our payers, our providers, our healthcare providers, and even our internal colleagues, they are asking for this information and more nuanced answers faster, and the questions are becoming even more complex. So I think two things it looks like when we incorporate AI: real-time insight generation, AI tools that continuously scan our environment, our literature, our Congress abstracts to bring up any emerging safety signals. We can use it for competitive intelligence and also to identify evidence gaps. But for MSLs, I think it's a great way to support our KOL mapping, using network analysis and publication tracking to identify those rising thought leaders that we want to be the first to have contact with. Throughout my career, I have consistently been focused on building infrastructure and capabilities that support a high performing team. And I mentioned before that we did that at one of the things that we were able to accomplish at J&J was building out a CVM, field medical excellence function. And again, the purpose is really for that team to create systematic approaches to insight generation and the synthesis of field medical insights. So we utilized AI to aggregate the tremendous number of MSL insights that were being brought into the organization to help us identify new trends, patterns in clinical practice, unmet medical needs, or even prescriber concerns. So I think there's a way to use it appropriately, but when done well, we have to integrate it into our framework and not as a replacement of what we do or a replacement of scientific rigor, but just a way to accelerate it.
I think AI is touching everything. And I think we're at a point where we absolutely have to lean into how it's going to speed up, drive, challenge, but free up time and space to do patient-centric work.
Yeah,
So I think that it's not only looking at it from what it can do for us, but what does it give us the freedom to do, and how we fill that time is something we need to also stay ahead of, because we don't want to create an environment where it replaces, because really
right,
the value is the people and the relationship, and AI is coming in and streamlining and helping and making more productive, and that frees us up to hone our skills around communication, networking, understanding people. And so, yeah, I really think it's sometimes we forget the other side of what it's allowing us to do that's not
yeah.
related to technology, and that's building those relationships that are such a big part of our world. Okay, speaking of, let's talk a little bit about people who have influenced you. So we're moving into some more personal questions. Who's had the greatest influence on how you lead or mentor others, and what did they teach you?
So I think the greatest influence on how I lead, or definitely one of the greatest influences on how I lead, would be my mom. My mom was a leader in her nursing profession for almost 50 years. She was the head of nursing at several different universities, and she was responsible for a lot of new nursing curriculums across the country. And really, just watching her being passionate, not only about healthcare, but just a passionate about education, period, and passionate about her sisters, her students, and helping people grow, develop, and learn. And that definitely sits with me every single day. She is, of course, retired now, and she has her own health challenges. But to see how students, even to this day, continue to rally around my mom, they seek her counsel, and they even take an active role in her care has really been awe-inspiring for me. So I think my mom definitely sits on the top for the folks that influence me. But in addition to her, I have been really lucky to have had some incredible medical affairs mentors over the years. And to name just two, Dr. Keith Stewart and Dr. Jim Ciano. Both of them are individuals who I believe practice servant leadership, which is what I truly believe in and what I practice. They have not just been focused on ensuring that medical affairs is successful and that the team is successful. Of course, that we are helping patients, but also that members on their team are growing, they're developing, and they try to really just pour into them at any opportunity that they can. And that has really set the foundation for me on how I work with my teammates. And again, I've been able to do a great number of things because someone has given me the space to do that. So very appreciative.
That is awesome. I think that your last few words is that connective tissue back to what you were saying earlier as part of your leadership style is giving people space to develop and grow, make mistakes, learn from, but still have direction. I think that is, I think it's just a mark of exceptional leaders. And it's not surprising. That's one of the things that the people who mentored you that had the most influence on you had a similar viewpoint. Let's talk a little bit about some things are like behaviors and routines that you have. So, what is a small or uncommon habit you practice that has led to an outsized impact on your effectiveness or well being?
So I don't know how uncommon it is, but I will say definitely journaling for me in the mornings has been very impactful. In a perfect world, I would do it every single morning, but that doesn't always happen. But I will say when I do, it really does set the tone for my day. And I practice gratitude in my journaling and not only being grateful for the things that I have, the situation I'm in, and whatever's going on presently, but also being grateful for the things that I don't have yet. And I think one of the things I talk about the most is being grateful for these amazing grandchildren that don't exist. But really just putting out into the universe how thankful I am for the present and also for the gifts of the future.
I love that story. And I love how you've said to me before that the days that you don't journal, and the days that you do, it
Mhm.
they land differently. And so it does having that routine that centers you and leaning into being grateful. It is how it shapes the way your day is going to go and the productivity, the relationships, the conversations, all of that can be impacted by little routines that we do every day. So I think that is a cool one.
Yeah. And Linda, I started journaling because I was really having a difficult time meditating. You have to quiet the voices in your head. And of course, what would come through is all the things I had to do for the day, everything I didn't get a chance to do the day before. So this really was a nice way for me to, again, just be grateful and to help me center myself.
Let's talk a little bit about how do you recharge? I think might be related to this, but how do you recharge or maintain resilience when work becomes intense or overwhelming?
Yeah. Three things. Spending time with family and friends. I'm part of a family and a friend group that we just really enjoy laughing a lot and telling stories about the good old days. I have a best friend who's been my best friend since the first grade. So as you can imagine, we have a lot of stories and lies that we tell on each other. So I love that. I love that. I also like to engage in activities that I can completely immerse myself into. So like that can be exercise or some type of activity that brings me joy and allows me to be creative is the best. Right now I'm in a play. I'm in a play. And I haven't done yeah, I haven't done that in high school, but I can't tell you what a blast it has been. And for the times that I go to play practice, it is I mean, it is so rejuvenating. I love it. I get to play outside myself. So it's really just one of the best things that I've done recently. And then probably the last thing is try to get a good night's sleep. I think great sleep is paramount. Unfortunately, I'm still working on improving my sleep hygiene, but on those days that I get a really good night's rest, it means all the world. Makes all the difference.
Absolutely. Having a good night's sleep is critical, especially as we get older. I think it's even more important to make sure and ensure because I don't know, I don't recover as fast as I used to. So my sleep hygiene, as you put it, is a big focus of mine as well. It's very important to recover. Let's talk a little bit about things that you might like whether or not you read a lot or podcasts or how you learn, but what one or two books or resources you most frequently recommend and why?
I think the number one book that I would probably recommend is Carol Dweck's Mindset. So that has been the cornerstone of how I have looked at failure and success. She highlights the difference between having a fixed mindset, which states that basically your intelligence, your skills, your talents are very static traits, and basically you're born with what you're born with, versus a growth mindset where the intelligence and talents can really be developed through dedication and work ethic and learning. And this really leads people to embrace different challenges, how they act during setbacks, to see that effort is the true path to mastery, how they learn from criticism, and how they also find inspiration in other people's success. So the mindset you adopt profoundly affects the trajectory of your life. It influences whether you achieve your potential, how you handle setbacks, which we talked about, and even how you develop relationships and how you lead others. So basically, at the end of the day, you're not stuck with the abilities you have today. You can grow. And I think that's an appreciation that we must all have about ourselves. But as leaders, we must also appreciate that in our teams, that there is space and opportunity to grow. So it's really built on continuous learning, being curious, always looking for opportunities of growth, reframing how we look at failure and success, and always being on the lookout of ways that we can improve. So I think it's a fantastic read for me. It has really set the foundation of how I think, and I would really recommend it for anyone.
That is awesome. Aside from a book, what other purchase under $100 changed your world? I think I know the answer to this, but go ahead and what
Yeah,
would you say?
I'll say my journals. So
Sure.
anyway, I'll say it's turned out to be my journals. As you can imagine, now since I've been focused on journaling, I'm all now focused on finding the best in the perfect journal. And that led to me having a pretty significant library of journals, but They make me happy and they serve a purpose.
I love that because it's something you can go and be on the lookout for, and people can gift for you.
I,
But yeah, it's a fun one. All right, so let's end with a pretty fun question. If you had a giant billboard visible to everyone in medical affairs, what would it say?
it would say, um, what we do matters. We work in an industry that doesn't always celebrate the efforts and the wins of medical affairs, and we know that. But when I think back to my very first MSL position, and I was working with a product for cyanide poisoning. And when I initially came into the role, I really couldn't describe to my mom and family members, like, now, what exactly do you do? But I just told them, hey, I'm having these really impactful educational conversations and it's making a difference. I remember one time going to the fire department in New York. And I had to give a talk to a pretty intimidating group of firefighting professionals. And afterwards, several of them came up to me and they said how beneficial the information was and how it explained why so many individuals and their colleagues lose their lives in house fires. Now, that for me was one of many light bulb moments. But fast forward now, I'm able to talk to physicians, learn about how, because of the information that we have shared with them, how it has changed their practice, how the institution has changed their patient care pathways based on information, and how it has helped provide patients with new therapeutic options. Definitely what we do matters. And the second thing is going back to coming from a situation where I was having impact as the one patient at a time, and now providing this important education through scientific exchange, it touches a tremendous number of individuals. So what we do matters. We may not always have the biggest celebrations or banners or go on like fantastic, amazing trips one day, but it does show up in how our patients are impacted and how we improve patient outcomes.
I love it. What we do matters is a great way to end this conversation. And it represents, again, exactly who you are as an exceptional leader. Thank you
Aw.
for being my first guest. You are exceptional is just too small of a word to
Aw.
describe you, but you are the perfect first guest, the poster child of what just monumental leadership looks like. And I'm so grateful for you.
I am so grateful for you. I think this is a fabulous initiative, one that I would have really appreciated as a young leader. Just being able to listen and learn from the mistakes and successes of others is huge. So, Linda, thank you for having me. And I look forward to seeing you down the hall at some amazing meeting and we do our slow motion run.
It's going to happen.
Over and over again.
Thank you, Davida.
Thank you.